My senior year, when he put me at quarterback, he was kind of apprehensive about it. He was hesitant to put me in. And when he put me in, I was fired up and ready to go. But unfortunately, I went and broke my foot. And it's probably one of the coolest things he ever said to me. But I broke my foot that night. I finished the rest of the four quarters or I finished the rest of the fourth quarter, and we of course went into triple overtime. And after that second overtime, I didn't care who won or lost. I was just ready to get for the game to be done with. At the end of it, we found out on Monday that I broke my foot, and my dad went over to me and was like, "Listen, I broke my foot, same exact way and everything. I couldn't walk. I don't know how you played in the game. You're freaking tough." And I was like, my dad just called me tough. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that was probably the coolest thing my dad's ever said to me, in all honesty. But because I was like, wow, he just called me tough, and my dad is like one of the toughest guys I've ever known, and I was very starstruck and in awe of that my dad just called me tough.
How much joy did you get out of seeing the success he had at Hebron?
Oh man, it was great because we had to fight to get him in there. There were some reservations because he was a defensive coach, and Coach Wilson was always high on the offensive side of the ball. Hiring those types, and at that time, Flower Mound had opened with Hebron, and Cody Vanford was getting the Flower Mound job. Well, they weren't sure about the other, and I went to bat for him, and the one thing I remember telling Coach Wilson when we were talking is, he was concerned about his offensive knowledge or being an offensive coach. And I said, but he's a good coach, Neil. And I said, and he knows how to surround himself with the right people. And I said, he'll do that and he'll do a great job for you. And I said, but you don't have a choice. He deserves the right. And Coach Wilson later thanked me for that, honestly.
Can you help try to put that into words from your perspective on the impact he had on coaching in the state of Texas?
I'll use a cliche. When you throw a rock in a pond and the ripples, you don't know how far the ripples are going to go out. Brian Brazel wasn't a rock. He was a boulder. He was like throwing a 10,000-pound weight and doing a cannonball, and just his effect on everything washed over. Anybody that ever ran into Brian loved him. If you played for him, his players thought he was the best thing, because Brian genuinely loved people. He loved what he was doing. He was born to coach. He loved his players so much. He loved his assistant coaches so much. And he did that by staying in contact with them. Look how many of them are head coaches and everything else. And I'm telling you now, his funeral was a testimony to what a life he led and what an impact he had.
I just like the spirit, man. He just was passionate about the game and passionate about kids, up and down the sideline. He was going to fight for his kids. His team was the first and most important thing at that time. And I'll tell you, really, my biggest memories, we're actually playing 7-on-7. This is 2004. We're down in Bryan. We made the championship round, and we're down there. And we're playing a really good team. I think it was West Orange Stark. And we had a player. He was one of the best athletes I ever coached. But they were running their mouths, and they were getting hot. We're sitting down in the end zone like we're supposed to, and we've got our flip-flops on, enjoying the ice heat in College Station. Our kids start barking, and then they started to fight. And Coach Brazel's a big old man. He was out of that chair, outrunning everybody to break those kids up. I remember his flip-flops flying everywhere, tackling our linebackers. Alex Odiari, was a big old kid, wrestling him to the ground, getting everything situated and stopped before he even got there. I just never forget that, watching him run and get after like that. It was one of the funniest things I ever saw, and never seen a big guy move that fast.
He always made everything fun. But, when he called me up and, he got in Chevrolet, coach of the week, and he could go pick out any car he wanted on that Chevy lot. And he picks out the one in the showroom that's a stick shift, which he has never driven. And so I was like, wait, first watching that man scrunch down into that Corvette, it was a Corvette. I'm like, are you going to fit it? Because he was so tall, his legs were gone forever. And he gets in that car, and we get here by the back of the main building where the tennis courts used to be. And he goes, come on, let's go to lunch. And we get in there, and he killed that thing 6 times before we hit the end of the parking lot, which isn't that long. And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna want to eat. I said, give me the car. I'll drive it. I know how to drive a stick shift. No, I got it. And we went to lunch, but I wasn't that hungry because I was so sick from being jerked around so much. But that was just who he was. He was just funny like that.
So we started Champion Sports Radio back in 2005. We had one broadcast crew that included myself, my good friend Ryan Mueller, and we broadcast every Hebron game that year, 16-0 state championship. And honestly, between that and the basketball teams winning district championships, I thought we should just change the name to Champion Sports Radio. So Coach Brazel has a lot to do with the name of the company and also taking a chance on a 27-year-old kid with a dream to start a company broadcasting high school sports. I was so passionate about it. I think he picked up on that. And he taught me so much about the nuances of the game of football at the high school level, about playoff tiebreakers. Nobody was better at that. And I've tried to take that over the last few years and always would check with him, make sure I was right. He taught me well on that, but he taught me so much. We had weekly conversations for years, whether I was on the Hebron broadcast or not. It was my favorite part of the week to sit down and talk football with Coach Brazel. So miss him terribly. Appreciate everything he's done for me and for us and for so many lives that he touched.
How many times he was there for me, just 2 men sorting out life. He just did that for me over and over and over. When I was going through something hard and I needed somebody to talk to, Brian was always the guy that I could lean on. And I think that's what made him so special, is he had that relationship with the players and the coaches. He was just a father figure, and being such a grounded Christian just gave such great perspective to everything. And he was that guy for me so many different times, helping me navigate through, whatever I was going through. And that's why I can't really name one story, but I can name 100 times when he was that person for me, if that makes sense. I'm glad LISD is doing this, because that's the right thing to do. And there's nobody that deserves this better than Brian. And I love him and I miss him.
He and I knew, we had talked. There was these schools calling me before we even played our state game, just solidifying an interview spot for me. And they were just saying, will you interview when the game's over? We don't want to bother you this week. So I said, yeah, well. And so I had like these interviews set up at 3 different places, and they were holding for me till after that game. And I remember thinking, man, something's going to land and I'm going to be leaving, And then anyway, so that whole week we just prepared like crazy, and then when we won and the game was over, he just approached me and just said, "Man, I'm gonna miss you so much," and that's what I said, and it was emotional. And that whole bus ride back to Hebron, we talked, and it was just. It was just so rich.
A truly great honor, and it's a tribute to him, a lasting legacy that his mark put on that program. I think of the other schools in LISD that have stadiums that named after him. Coach Briggs Stadium over in the Colony, started that program and was such a success. And to see Brian's name put on the woodshed, it just is so gratifying. It makes me so happy. And I'm sure all the players that were a part of those programs are so happy to see his name put on that stadium too. Max Goldsmith Stadium over in Louisville, longtime coach there in Louisville, have his name on that stadium. Coach Wilson, who was there. Michael coached for him. Of course, Brian coached with him, and those coaches that coached with him, and those kind of things. It's just such a lasting legacy to see his name on a stadium, and now Brian's name is in that group too. It's something that I think is really special, and I'm so happy for it.
What's one of the biggest memories you have of Coach Brazel, the coach, when you're on the sideline with him? Is there anything that stands out in that 96 championship season that you have vividly of him on the sideline with you?
He was just a presence. He would just he would hug you. He would pick you up. He would never let you get down. And of course, that was a lot of success happening in that season. We didn't have had much adversity hit us, but he was a guy that pushed you, but wouldn't let you fail on your own. He would be there to pick you up and make sure that he knew that you were loved and cared for, and all along with that look that he could give you when you knew it was time to compete at a very, very high level, that only Brian Brazel could stare you down and cock that head a little sideways, and the intensity that he went about his profession was you could see it a mile away.
A lot of my memories are seeing what I thought was the genuine Coach Brazel come out, and if you were around him enough, you got to see these little things. Coach Brazel liked to play. Coach Brazel loved to compete. Coach Brazel loved to play, even as an adult, and I think that's why he connected so well with the kids. But some of my favorite memories, Coach Brazel would love to punt. Like if we were doing a specialist period and the punt returners needed to get work, Coach Brazel was going to be the punter, and he was going to help them get some reps. But he loved to punt, and if the punters needed to punt, Coach Brazel had no problem going back there and playing punt return. Those moments in practice, I think, were those that connected him with the kids, and he wouldn't mind the kids seeing him in that light, and it's something I certainly have always remembered about Coach B.
I was at Euless Trinity for 2 years, and we played them in a playoff football game at Texas Stadium. We actually beat them in the last couple of seconds of the game. We were watching the film the next Sunday morning, and our photographer got it backwards. He thought he was filming the plays, but he had it backwards. So only thing we were seeing is the huddles, and then he would cut it off during the plays. So we didn't have a film to watch. And so our head coach was furious. And I stepped in and said, look, I know Coach Brazel real well, and I bet he'll give us that film from last night, the Louisville cut. And he goes, I remember him saying, nobody would ever do that. We just kicked their butt. And I said, there's good people in this world, and Brian's one of them. And so I got on the phone. I called Brian. He lived right by Euless Trinity at the time, even though he's coaching at Louisville. So he comes and picks me up from Trinity High School, drives me over to Louisville High School. We talk about the Hebron job that he's about to get, or that he thinks he's going to get. I tell him I'm all in. We basically had the interview in the car that day. I knew that's where I was going to be, because I found out in this business, it's who you work for more than anything else. And Brian's the best boss I've ever had, for sure.